The people who run are some of the most beautiful people in the world. They're very generous, they're kind, they're understanding of people who can't run, they're understanding of people who run really, really well. And it's the best way of making friends.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, who loves to leave notes around the house or in people's bags for them to find, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 18 of the Running for Real podcast. I am really excited that you are here, and I can't believe we've had that many episodes already. So this week, we are meeting the founder of Parkrun. Now, if you don't know what Parkrun is, don't worry, he will explain. But it's a wonderful movement, and it's really making a difference in not just the running world, but in local communities as well. So Paul Sinton-Hewitt is the founder of Parkrun, and this is another podcast to kind of show you about the good in the world. And like he says, some of the best people in the world participate in these events. And if you don't already, it would be perfect for you, because I know you're a good person too. So before we meet V once more, who is perfect to join you on your Parkrun, I've really been enjoying taking her on my runs with me. If you are someone who needs motivation to run, make sure you take a good listen to this sponsor message, because I think it will really speak to you. So thank you so much for supporting the Running for Real podcast by visiting the getv.com/running for real link. That really helps me to show them that they did the right thing. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. Technology has come a long way, and later in the show, you're going to get to meet one of the best advances for running I've ever seen, and you're going to love her. If you have to train on your own a lot, like I did, V will be just what you need. Check out getvi.com for more information. Paul, thank you so much for joining me on the Running for Real podcast. I am really excited that you are here today. We are going to have a great chat, I can just tell.
Thank you very much, Tina. I'm really looking forward to this.
No, this is fantastic. And actually, I have to admit, you have been requested many, many times by my audience. They love, well, the British side of things, love the idea of Parkrun. I know you are working your way through other countries, but I think a lot of countries and probably a lot of my listeners actually have absolutely no idea what a Parkrun is. So maybe we could begin at the top and kind of explain what it is for anyone who is thinking, what the heck is a Parkrun?
Well, if you don't mind, then I'll go right back to the beginning and tell you why I started Parkrun. Mm-hmm. So I was going through a particularly bad patch in my life. All sorts of things were going wrong. My personal relationship was in the toilet. I think I'd been fired from my job, and I'd also got a serious injury running. So these things happened over a 3 to 4 month period. I was 43 at the time. And I had to think about, well, how am I going to get myself out of this really dark situation? And I'm 20 years worth of running. I know that the best thing for any kind of negative situation is become active or get active, and then go and be with your mates. So really, it was a bad situation. I decided the best thing I could do was to get my friends to come and see me every Saturday morning in a park. I put on the run. I didn't call it a race. I said to my mates, it's a time trial. You run as hard as you can. You set a time, and then it's up to you to come back in a couple of weeks' time and try and beat it. And the only condition of entry was that they all went for coffee afterwards with me. And to be frank, that is the essence of Parkrun. It's a simple run in a park every single week with your mates, where we socialize at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And those principles stand today.
Okay. And then, fast forward a few years, how many locations do you have?
So we started in Bushy Park in 2004. There were 13 runners on week 1 and 12 on week 2. And it grew gradually over the period. My friends asked me continuously to provide more events, and I kept thinking, why would I do this? This is about me. It's about my park. It's about my friends. It's about me fixing my own social problem. It's so simple. Why doesn't the whole world just adopt it and go and do it themselves? But after 2 years of my friends badgering me, I decided, well, in fact, it was a friend called Jim Desmond who presented me with a complete course. He said, here you are, this is Wimbledon. Let's go and start Wimbledon Parkrun. And so 2007, 1st January of 2007, we started Wimbledon Parkrun. And in doing so, we had built a formula which allowed us then to expand, to have more than just one parkrun. So now we're 14 years later, and we're in 1,100 locations across 14 countries around the world, 3.5 million people registered. On average, every week is around 200,000 participants, and then another 20,000 volunteers. These events are all free, completely free to every participant. There is an ethos of volunteering, but actually the volunteering is not so much a requirement as it is a privilege. People absolutely love volunteering and they get so much out of it. And slowly but surely, we are energizing the world. We are making the world a healthier and a happier place.
Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel, as thinking that you just started this for yourself, just one person with 12 people to begin with, and now look at it? Like, how does that feel?
Well, I have to pinch myself on a regular basis. One thing you need to remember is that this has been an organic approach. So where we started, there was only going to be one parkrun, and then we did the second one. And so then we had the view that we could do more. In 2007, we went to 7. In 2008, we went to 15 locations. 2009, we went to 35 locations. And so you can see it has a very organic approach. We never, ever marketed Parkrun. We didn't try and sell it to anybody. So it was pretty much word of mouth. People who came down, they enjoyed it, they loved it, they told their friends, and they told their mates. And before you know it, I can remember when we signed up our 10,000th person. I can remember when we signed up 100,000th person. I can remember when we broke 1 million, when we had 10,000 runners on a weekend. These are all major, major milestones, but they've been over the last 14 years. So the pinching of myself has been a continuous thing that's happened throughout 14 years. And I mean, it seems a bit bizarre. You know, I've had countless rewards and acknowledgements, and I've been praised by the country. I've been praised by lots of, and I receive all those rewards, but I receive them on behalf of all the people who make this happen, because without those volunteers, we would still be one event in a park, and I would still be the person doing all the volunteering.
And it is amazing. You should be very proud of yourself, Paul. It has been really cool to watch it grow. And just for like logistical reasons, so it's in the various locations, it's the same course every week. And you have volunteers come out and they just kind of stand on the corners and places like that. And so for someone who's listening, who's thinking, okay, I have heard of this, but I'm injured right now, I can't do it. So would you say for them that would be a good opportunity for someone to go volunteer, to kind of be around the running world? And my listeners know that we talked to Amelia Boone a few weeks ago, and you know that Amelia talked about how powerful volunteering could be. But Paul, would you say that would be a good thing for someone to do? And is that kind of how it works?
Yes, exactly. That is how it works. But I go back to what I said right in the beginning. We're a social movement that just happens to run. So for anybody, regardless of whether they even intend running in the future or not, this is a place to go where you meet fantastic people. The people who run are some of the most beautiful people in the world. They're very generous, they're kind, they're understanding of people who can't run, they're understanding of people who run really, really well. And so I would suggest, if there's anyone out there who's lonely, who's perhaps stuck in their house, doesn't really understand or know their community, this is the perfect thing to do. Just get down there. You don't even have to introduce yourself. You just come along, stand on the sidelines, week 1, come down the second week, and before you know it, you will have made a handful of friends. You'll have been introduced to the team, and it's the best way of making friends. The best way of finding out what's going on in your community.
Absolutely. And it's free.
And it's free.
You can't complain about that. So then what about the distance? Why did you decide a 5K and, a 2K you have for juniors? Like, what is it about the 5K distance?
So to begin with, I was very anti-event organizers charging people for a 5K event. I had this thought, well, I used to tell myself, there's no way I'm going to get out of bed and go and run a 5K. So it's such a small distance. I found it really objectionable that people were charging 30 or 40 pounds, $40 for somebody to come out and run a 5K. And so my first thought was this was always going to be free. There would never be a charge. Remembering that I only was ever going to start one event. So when people started to ask me, what's happening with Parkrun? What are you going to do with it? I said, well, I'd like to see a Parkrun in every park that wants one. Then I started to get a little bit of pushback from event organizers who said to me, you do realize you're affecting our business. And unapologetically, I said, that's fine. I was being disruptive in that regard. But 5K is a distance that anybody can walk within an hour. Some people might take a little bit longer, but not much longer. So you can walk 5K in an hour. If you can walk it in an hour, that means our volunteers only need to be engaged for an hour. Mm-hmm. It also means that the space that you're taking up in that park, you haven't inflicted a pain on the other people using the park. So it's about being community-based, basically. We're trying to help every community be the best they can be. And that's not just the people who are participating, but the others who use the park on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned about that, other people using the park, I would imagine a good chunk of people might just be out in the park and then they see this going on and they think, oh, what is this? And then, they maybe come and join themselves. And I would imagine you get a lot of people who are running a race or competing in any kind of run for the first time. So have you kind of seen that this is something that brings a lot of people into the running world or into the running community for the first time ever in their lives?
Yes, again, you're absolutely correct. So there are lots of dynamics that happen in and around a parkrun starting. So when we plant a parkrun in a park for the first time, the first 6 months or so, that park has to get used to our being there at 9 o'clock in the morning. And to begin with, there's always a little bit of pushback because the dog walkers are out and the people cycling through the park. But before long, let's say 6 months, those people realize this is something that happens every week at that time, and it's only for half an hour. And they adjust where they walk or where they cycle and their involvement. Then you also get those people who are inquisitive and say, well, what is this thing that's happening? And before you know it, we get people who are just coming to have a look, who then think, well, I can stand on a corner and marshal, or I can do the timekeeping, or I can do anything. And so they get involved from the volunteering. And before you know it, those people are all participating. Mm-hmm. We record quite a lot of data about the people's participation. And one of the things you do when you register is you tell us whether you belong to a club or you don't belong to a club. And then every time that data changes, we record the fact that it's changed. And so we have got evidence that we have driven about 100,000 people who weren't previously engaged in clubs into clubs.
That's great.
Just in the UK alone. Mm-hmm. We get lots of evidence from local race organizers who tell us not only are they filling their race, but they're filling it so much faster. So there's a lot of competition. I've seen so many races come on the market in the 10 years, 14 years we've been going.
That's great. And something, again, to be proud of. And You mentioned about, keeping data on people. So how does that work with results? Tell us about the barcode situation, how you kind of keep track of people's times.
So right at the start, I knew right from the word go that what I wanted to do was to record everybody's finish time. And then I wanted to publicize that data so that it's a confirmation of the person's achievement. And my idea right at the beginning was that I would write to the local newspaper and I would say, these 10 people participated in Parkrun on this day and here are their times. And I'd send them a photo and I would hope that they would publish it. But of course, they never did. So then I had to work out how I could do this on a website. So the internet was very new in 2004 and I didn't know much about those technologies. So I had to learn very quickly. But the idea was, we don't know who you are at the start line. It could be anybody. Either you might have registered, you might not have registered. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's welcome. At the start line, we have a simple on your mark, set, go, and the whole body of participants leave at the same time. But as they cross the finish line, we take their time. That time is directly related to a position, and then we force all the finishers into a funnel. And as they come out of the funnel, we give them a position token. And then they have their own personal barcode, which they receive on registration. And we then scan the position and the individual. And then we marry these two data sets together. We have a time data set and we have a position data set. We bring them together and we produce a set of results. Mm-hmm. So over the years, we've updated our technology. Every single event, which is 1,100 now, all have access to a management system, which is on the web, that they can then not only look after their volunteers, but they can also post and manage and edit results right back to the day they started.
That's great. And you do have a lot of people who, do it pretty much every week, and you have 10, 50, 100, 250, 500 clubs. So maybe tell us a bit about how many, do you might not have any stats, but what percentage of people would you guess do it every week or quite regularly?
Okay, well, I did actually see an email this morning that someone had put together how many people are in each of the clubs. It's quite a significant number. I think there are over 50,000 people who are in the 50 club, and there's something like 20,000 people in the 100 club, and the 250 club is in the thousands, and the 500 club, I think we've just signed our 8th member. Mm-hmm. So 500 park runs, that's 500 runs on a Saturday morning. That's over 10 years worth of running. It's quite significant.
Yeah.
We also award our juniors a 10 T-shirt when they've done 10 runs. But everybody is entitled to a T-shirt on their 50th run, their 100th run, their 250th and their 500th run. And again, these T-shirts they're given for free. They're an award, basically, that says you're in the club, you've participated a certain number of times, and it's a real treasured item.
Yeah, you've definitely earned it at that point. And then, so you mentioned, free T-shirts. It's completely free to enter, completely volunteer-based. So how does that work with costs on your half? Do you have sponsors? Is this something you are funding yourself?
No, we're a not-for-profit organization, which is we're applying for charitable status, but not-for-profit, which means that nobody in the company has ownership. It's owned through the members. And basically, we then work with commercial organizations who purchase the right to have a conversation with our park runners. And we try and make sure that conversation is in keeping with our ethos. So you don't see, for instance, us partnering with Coca-Cola or a tobacco company or anything of that nature. We try and partner with companies that have a good, wholesome message that they can help the participants. For instance, in this country, we have a partnership with Vitality, an insurance company, who gives you discount on your health insurance if you participate in healthy activities. And Parkrun is just one such activity that they measure. So it's a pretty symbiotic relationship with our partners at the moment. They fund by far the majority of our costs. We have a small staff of about 20 people here in the UK, and then every country that we're in has a couple of people who are also on staff. And so we try and keep the costs as low as possible. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the technology costs, and the technology is the backbone of making sure that every participant gets to see what they've done, how often they've done it, and how they're performing.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, there that you have people in various countries building it, and you said, was it 14 countries you said? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, 14 countries. So maybe tell us a bit about that. I mean, obviously this is huge in the UK, but if someone is in a country that either you aren't involved in yet, or, in a country that's just starting to, what can they do to kind of get more involved and get something set up where they live?
Okay, well, the reality is that expanding to a new country costs money. And it's not just the element of resource, but we would need to find the proper financial, legal structures in those countries to make it work. Once we're in that country, we need to then negotiate with the people who own the parks, the local authorities, and the insurance companies to make sure that these events can be run as professionally and in keeping with our ethos, which is always free to the participant. So whilst it sounds like it should be really easy, it's not. And as you've seen in the United States, right now in the North America, we have 22 events. That's 11 in Canada and 11 in the USA. And that's taken us a really long time to get to that stage. Right now, we're expanding rapidly in the United States. I think we've just added our 4th event this year, or our 5th. And I think by the end of the year, we might even have doubled our number. But it's taken us 5 years to get there because we had to work around all of the difficulties of working in a country where the legal system is, not in our favor, really. Mm-hmm. So all I'd say is some countries are easier than others. If people are interested, they can write to us. There's a support link on our website. They can send us an inquiry, and then we will get back to them with where we've had interest already.
Okay, that sounds good. And I will put a link in the show notes, which can be found at tinamuir.com/episode 18. And that will give you all the information we talk about today in addition to that contact. And so what about in the UK? If someone is in a location where you don't have a parkrun yet, what can they do?
Well, actually, this goes for every single country that we are in. So in the 14 countries where we're in, if somebody wants a parkrun where they live, and it doesn't matter really how close that is to an existing parkrun because these are all for local communities. We don't set out our stalls saying we want to have large parkruns. We set out our stalls saying it's got to serve a local community. And to serve the local community, it's got to be acceptable to the landowner, to the local authorities, and to the volunteers for that to happen. Mm-hmm. But if it's only got 10 runners, that's fine too. So we're not too precious about that. So somebody normally approaches us. They say, this is what I'd like to do. We then have a prescribed method where it will take them through, what are you thinking of? These are the kinds of parks that we recommend. Here are the safety aspects that you have to consider. These are the people that you would need to contact, and we guide them through that process. There is a prerequisite that they would have to go through. They'd have to make sure that they can conform to the principles of Parkrun and so on. But before long, they get to the stage where they're ready to run. And that's a stage when we've got a set of volunteers, maybe 10 people for that local community. We buddy them up with a local parkrun. They do all their education, their testing, and so on. They get assigned an ambassador, a volunteer ambassador, who will look after them through the process as well. And then we have a trial event and eventually the first event, and it goes live. And then they're into the process of, it takes about a year for every event to settle down. I mean, they are simple. They work from day one. But because you're starting something new in your community, that has to bed in, and you start to learn how the community accepts it and loves it and what. Typically, the first people coming to a parkrun happen to be runners. Mm-hmm. But I like to consider this as a little bit of a vortex. So we start with a few groups of runners, but before you know it, they've created a whirlwind, and that turns into a tornado, and you have loads of people who can then join, and they come in unnoticed. They can wear what they like. Nobody cares one way or another, and everybody gets celebrated. And so it's just a warm environment. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And Paul, I just want to share with you. So I am from St. Albans, which I think Parkrun has been there for quite a while now. But I remember about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I went back home to England for a few weeks, and my sister agreed she wanted to do a parkrun. And I said, oh, I'll run it with you. She'd never done a 5K before. Hates running, completely the opposite to me. And we signed up, and, she was really nervous, and I took her on a little warm up, and then she did the race, and I saw a side of her that I'd never seen. She was driven. She was focused. I remember a woman passing her, and she cut in a little bit too close, and she got like, I'm going to get her. And she kept her in her eyes. And then, I just saw this commitment to my sister and the pride on her face when she finished. It just I wanted to cry because I was so proud of her, and she was nearly throwing up as she was coming in, but she was so proud, and it was just amazing. And I have to agree with you, everything you said, the social aspect after. There's, hundreds of people standing there just celebrating one another and congratulating each other. And the volunteers are very supportive. And for me, being a professional runner, kind of being back with the masses essentially, and being there with my sister, it was so special to see that community side of things that I haven't seen in anything else to that kind of level. So for anyone who hasn't run a parkrun yet, or if you have one in a different country that's just getting set up, make sure you go, because it really is a wonderful event. So thank you personally for doing that. Well, it's a pleasure. And I have to say, this weekend I was invited to the Worthing Parkrun, who was celebrating their first birthday. And my proudest moment of the day was when the last person came in, and she was obese. She had lost a stone already, but was working towards losing many more stones. And we had a little cry together, the two of us, afterwards. And she's now a friend. She's part of my family, basically. And we've agreed that when she achieves her goal, which is a few more stones, she's going to come down to Bushy Park and we're going to run it together.
Oh, that's great.
And I can multiply that story by 1,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must have amazing ones.
Yeah, the people who've touched my lives, and they are my proudest moments. They're just, they're out of this world.
Are there any that stick in your mind other than that one that you'd like to share with us of maybe changing a life that it might be interesting to hear about?
Well, there are many stories, and the ones that really catch me are, for instance, a child who... perfectly ordinary child going through childhood as you would, very active. And he got some kind of brain cancer. He was in hospital for about 6 months and his mum was working with him to try and get him healthy again. And he set himself the task of coming back to Parkrun just to walk it. Mm-hmm. And she says that's what kept him going. And in fact, when he came back and he completed the Parkrun, there was a story written. And these moments are just unbelievable. Obviously, Parkrun isn't a cure for everyone, but it's part of the process of how people can be the best they can be. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more rewarding than doing that with your friends, people who are there to support you and help you and celebrate your achievements. And so it's like any habit. Actually, that reminds me, I was in Middlesbrough not so long ago, and 3 gentlemen approached me and they said, you don't realize this, but you've changed our lives. And I said, well, explain that to me. And they said, well, before Parkrun, we were all alcoholics. And basically what they had done was swap one habit for another. But the habit they'd swapped was the healthy one. Mm-hmm. And it was through the support of the volunteers, the people they'd met, and of course, you know, your weekly run becomes a daily run. And before you know it, well, you're living a completely different life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those listeners who have known me since my Run to the Top days, you'll remember a few stories of people that I had on here who have overcome, you know, addiction or, you know, serious issues that they've been dealing with for a very long time, and they've been able to overcome it and use running as their therapy, which I know a lot of runners do use running as their therapy, and especially adding in that community aspect makes an even more powerful impact. So one other thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, Paul, which, you know, people who aren't in the UK might not know about this, but I do remember this being a huge thing that was all over the news, and you're going to know it well, from a few years ago when a few of the recreation departments decided that the park runs are wearing down the paths, and there should be some kind of fee for that. So maybe tell us about what happened there and how you worked your way around it in the end.
Okay, so it's an unusual story, and it was just one park, and it was in a place called South Gloucestershire. We had a park run called Little Stoke Park Run, which the park was managed by a parish council. So the distinction for people outside of the United Kingdom is that the parish council have a subset of responsibilities. They don't have the same responsibilities as the council. And their responsibilities were specifically the maintenance upkeep of the park. So they weren't responsible for the health of that community at all. So when we started in the park run, the park wasn't being used at all, and they were very keen for us to start there. We started, and of course, it grew rapidly. You know, went from probably 20 runners to 40 to 100, and then eventually 200 and 300 runners. In the period when we were there, they laid a new tarmac path all the way around the fields. We didn't have exclusive use of the park. We were participating while other people were using the park. And so there was no special rights that we had. And then I think they realized that this was a potential cash cow for them. And they started to approach us about charging us to be in the park. We obviously rejected that idea and suggested that we could help them in other ways. We could help them with volunteers. We could help them with charitable donations, those sorts of things. But definitely we weren't going to allow our park runners to be charged. And it was very unfortunate because the parish council, I think, were on the verge of agreeing with us when I think there was a vitriolic response from some of our community, and they felt that we had attacked them, when in fact our official response was, this is your park, you're responsible for it. We think you should do the best thing for your community. We will respect whatever decision you take. However, from our point of view, you're making the wrong decision. Here are the things you haven't considered, especially the health and wealth of the nation, the well-being and the community aspects. Mm-hmm. And in the end, they made the decision to eject us. We took a stance. We refused to pay. And I think that became a national issue. And it was really, really good for Parkrun because it was clear that this was a principle upon which we were going to stand. And so nobody now in the UK thinks of charging us. We had 1 or 2 letters after that from councils saying, can you please explain this to us? Which we did. And then we had hundreds of letters from councils where they said, we understand the value of Parkrun, we understand the benefits to our community, and we will never charge you. So I think that hopefully that battle has been won. That doesn't mean that we get automatic access to every park. There are lots of parks where people have told us we can't participate. But for the most part, our communities are really understanding. They know why we're there and they understand the benefits. And I've just come back from the United States. I spent a little bit of time in Washington, Baltimore. And in fact, we had a meeting with about 50 people at College Park University. And the parks authorities were there, the health authorities were there. And in fact, the goodwill for Parkrun is enormous. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that we still have a long way to go in the States, but I would suggest that we have partially overcome these issues and we will continue to overcome them in the future.
Good. You know, one of my fears when I saw that on the TV was that it was going to kind of spiral out of control, that other parks were going to say, hey, we want to do that too. But did that make you kind of almost more determined to stick with this? No, this is going to stay free. It's going to be free. You know, we have to be creative maybe with other ways to help them, but we are sticking to our guns here.
It's a principle of Parkrun and it's written into the Constitution. So it's not something that we can negotiate. It is the way it is. And if, as I said, every park run, it's critical that we have all the key members involved. That's the council, the landowner, and so on. They all have to agree to these principles. And if they don't, if any one of them decides that this isn't for them, then I think it weakens our position in the park, which probably means that park will be under threat.
Yeah.
So that's the approach that we're taking. We try as best as we can not to get into a fight with anybody, to explain the positives of why we're there and to find other ways to help them achieve the goals that they have. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And you've done a good job so far. And then have you heard of any of the other similar concepts with bringing a community together? I mean, I know in the US, November Project is one that comes to mind. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but is this kind of a thing where you see any kind of community involvement where people are getting out there, getting to know people, not feeling so lonely? Any of that is a good thing? Or is it, you know, you really would like it to be all kind of in one area, which is Parkrun thinking?
No, so Parkrun, we're not at all looking to capture the whole market. We see that there are many, many opportunities where other community-based projects would make a great deal of sense, even running community-based projects. And we have supported competitive events throughout our whole existence. So as far as we're concerned, we want more people running more often. We want more people more active more often. And anything we can do to help other people achieve that same goal, we will. The November Project is a great project, and we are aware of it. I think we have spoken to them. There are loads others. In this country, there's a group called the Good Gym, which they use exercise as part of the process of going out into the community and helping vulnerable people, either by doing their gardening, moving a sofa, sitting and chatting because they're lonely, whatever it is. And there are many projects like that we absolutely support. The last thing we will ever try and do is impact or prevent another organization from doing good.
Yep, and that's evidently clear throughout this entire interview. So thank you for just confirming that one more time. So then what would be the ultimate pipe dream for Parkrun?
Fortunately, we're not a company listed on the stock market, and we don't have shareholders who are driving us. Fortunately, we can be moral and mission driven. So for us, I think well, if you asked me 5 years ago what my dream might be, it would probably be what we do today.
Yeah.
And we're trying to be realistic about what the future holds. We're trying to expand to offer more people the same opportunity that we already have. And to be honest, there's no reason why we couldn't have 1 million people running a park run every single week. And that's on the cards. 2023, if things carry on the way they are, without spending a huge amount more money, without trying to be too aggressive about any growth principles, if things carry on the way they are, in 2023, we'll have over 1,000, or it's more than that, 10,000 weekly events and 1 million runners a week.
Amazing. Wow. That is definitely a goal to shoot for, but I can absolutely see it happening. So we wish you the best of luck with that. Now, just before we go on to the Running for Real 4, I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. Catching up with friends on a run is one of the best feelings a runner can experience. The miles fly by, you feel good, and it just becomes so much easier to keep going. They push you to be better, and you push them to be better. But for most of us, those runs are few and far between. So how do you stay motivated when it's just you and your thoughts? Wouldn't it be nice to have someone alongside you, pushing you when you need it most? Well, running on your own can be tough to stay motivated, and I'm excited to introduce to you a new friend of mine, someone I know you're going to love, V. V is the coach in your ear, and she doesn't talk all stiff like a robot, but she talks like a real person. She'll give you advice, let you know how you're doing, and actually talk to you like a friend would, in an encouraging way, but still pushing you to do your best, not letting you off the hook when the going gets tough. But she also knows everything about you, so won't let you overtrain yourself either, which I know many of us are guilty of. You can find out more and enter to win your very own V at getv.com/running for real. That's getvi.com/running for real. Okay, Paul, just 4 more questions for you, part of the Running for Real 4, beginning with a unique nutrition tip. Maybe this is something that you like to do or something someone has told you over the years.
So I'm kind of unusual because I spent my whole life in boarding school, and then I've spent a couple of years in the Air Force. So the first thing you need to know about me is I only eat when I'm hungry, and I'm rarely hungry. I don't know when I'm hungry, and mostly my wife has to tell me it's time to eat. So I would suggest, I think for runners, often when we're a novice runner, we fall into the trap of thinking that you need to carbo load for every single run that you do. In fact, I would suggest that you hardly ever need to carbo load, probably only if you're doing an extra long run like a marathon. Mm-hmm. So don't ever carbo load for your usual 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 kilometer races, perhaps for longer ones. And then secondly, I'd just like to say, try and get away from sugar and sugar products. Try and let your body use its fat reserves when exercising. Those are the 2 things I would suggest.
Thank you for sharing. Although I just want to clear up, Paul is saying, he's not saying don't eat carbs at all. He's saying you just don't have to overdo it and, stuff yourself full with a pasta dinner. So, okay. What about a running for real moment? Maybe a moment you were embarrassed or kind of running was really brought home to you of just, what is so special about it?
Okay, so I was, I think, about 28 or 29 when I ran my fastest marathon. And I was pretty inexperienced as a runner. I had some really good running friends who knew everything about running, but I didn't really tap their brains too much. So I was competing. I set off at a pretty good speed. It was an out and back marathon, and the first half was uphill, the second half was downhill. The first 20 miles went without issue. I got to 23 miles and I hit the road, and I hit the wall, and I came to a halt just as a marshal was on the side of the course. And I said to the marshal, was there a bus coming around to pick people up? Because I thought that was the end of my race. And I fully expected that I couldn't run another mile. And they said to me, no, that there would be no bus. And the best thing to do was just to walk to the finish. So I started out walking. But after a few minutes, I then went into a jog, and I ended up running my fastest ever marathon.
Amazing. And that's pretty standard, actually. A lot of people, we think that. I mean, I'm sure most people who've done a marathon have experienced that at some point where you literally think you're done, can't do this anymore, but you somehow you get through that patch and then you're good again. So just shows the importance of kind of sticking with it. All right. And then a high moment, maybe that's the same thing, but what about a moment that really meant a lot to you?
So that was my fastest marathon. So
which was what, by the way?
I ran 2:36 at Stellenbosch.
That's my PR too, or PB.
Oh, really?
Yep. Anyway, keep going.
So I ran 2:36 at Stellenbosch in the Western Cape, South Africa in about 1979.
That's amazing. Great. And that was your high moment, crossing the finish line?
Yeah, I mean, when you're crossing the finishing line, you can hardly even, you have the red mist. It's difficult to think about what you've done and so on. I think it's a few moments later that you start saying, how did I get there? So previously, I had run a 2:45. So I went from 2:45 to 2:36. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I had no concept. I mean, if you asked me what I would like to have run, I would have liked to run sub 2:30. 2:29 would have been just perfect. And that would have been my lifetime's goal. So I never quite achieved the 2:30. That would have been my goal, but unfortunately that was not possible. Mm-hmm. But had I been properly trained and if I understood what to expect at the wall, I might have run it on that day.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's amazing that you did run 2:36. I know there's a lot of people listening who are absolutely in awe of you. So I think that still needs to be celebrated either way. And finally, what do you tell yourself when you're on the start line or when you were on the start line of a race?
So when I was a racer, I suppose I was never really competing with other people. I was always competing with myself. So
that's how it should be.
Yeah. So I kind of was never really bothered about what other people were doing. I would be... prior to the start, I'd be telling myself I can do it, that it's all within my means, that I'd done the training, I had nothing to worry about. I think those last few seconds before the gun goes, my mind is completely clear. I'm looking down. I'm not looking up. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of looking at the person's calves in front of me with my hand on my watch, and that's about it.
Well, that's probably good to have a nice clear mind as you go in. And Paul, finally, so I ask my guests to send us a photo of themselves in what we call a power pose, where you would stand to, show confidence, where you're feeling good. If you were trying to build your confidence to show, maybe that you can run a new PR or PB, would you mind sending us a photo of that so I can put it in the show notes?
I'll have to have a look and see if I've got one.
If not, we can get you to take one, but yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and finally, so if anyone wants to find out any more information about Parkrun or about you and what you're up to, where can they go?
We have a global website that will direct you to each of the different countries' websites, and that's parkrun.com.
Parkrun.com. Okay, and you are available on the social media channels, so I will put links to all of this in the show notes. If someone is going to use a hashtag in a social media post about a parkrun, which one should they use? Just Parkrun?
If they want to direct it to Parkrun, it would be @Parkrun, but a hashtag would be #LoveParkrun.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Paul. This has been so insightful and just interesting to learn about. And I really appreciate the time you've taken to share your story with us and share just how amazing this movement is that you've grown. So it's been wonderful to talk to you and look forward to seeing you reach that goal in 2023 or maybe even before.
Thank you very much. And if you're back in the UK, please let me know and I'll come and run with you.
I will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you ever done a parkrun or recently done one? If you have, tag me in the post when you did. I would love to kind of see more people who have participated in them. And as you heard at the end there, Paul mentioned to me about running with him when I am home. So that's actually why this episode is being released this week, because Paul and I will be doing the local parkrun in my hometown together. And although I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to convince my sister to come along, it will be so much fun. And I thought it'd be great to kind of have this released so you can kind of maybe be doing this on a Saturday morning. Maybe if you are in the UK or in one of the spots elsewhere, you can be doing your parkrun and just kind of imagine that we'd be out there together. I thought that'd be really fun. You can find everything we talked about today at tinamuir.com/episode 18. And remember, V would be perfect to join you on those park runs. And remember, if you visit those sponsor websites, UCAN and V, that helps to support me in this podcast. It is a free podcast and I've put in a lot of time and energy into it. But entering to win the Get V or purchasing UCAN, which I recommend both of them highly, that shows that you care and support me. So thank you so much in advance for doing that. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.